It has been a very unusually cold and snowy January here, but that's okay because it's perfect cozy weather for reading.
So today we have our first book review of 2025, all the different books that we read in January.
So grab a blanket, pull up your couch, and let's talk books. Our Catholic read-along book for the month of January was from Sophia Institute Press, Miracle of the Saints by Henry Beda. I don't know if we're saying that right, but here it is.
And so we have put this book on our Catholic Christmas book wish list because we thought it looked really good. And so we were super excited and happy to see this one show up in the mail.
Because it is really good. We especially like the way the book is set up. It's broken down into sections like saints who raised the dead and saints who performed very unusual miracles.
And this book is also just really beautiful. It's big, it's got the glossy pages, and it's full of color photos, and overall it is just very well put together.
So we're really excited because this book has a whole section on Saint Gabriel Possenti, who is also known as Saint Gabriel of Our Lady of Sorrows, also known as the gun saint because he was an expert marksman. We don't really hear a lot about him here in America, but he's my son's confirmation saint, so of course we love him. And some of the stories in here about him are just crazy amazing.
So he died in Italy in 1903, but he appeared in America in 1905 in Pennsylvania to a group of Italian miners who were unknowingly going to work in a very unsafe tunnel.
So the miners went down into the tunnel, just an ordinary day, and then they heard a voice saying, get out, it's not safe. And then they just froze because, you're
hearing voices in your minds.
Hearing voices from your mind. And then Gabriel Possenti himself appeared to them and literally yelled at them, get out, and was pushing them out of the tunnel himself. And they knew it was Gabriel. They recognized him because they had a devotion to him and they were from his area of Italy.
So we love seeing him appear in this book, and it also has some of our other favorite saints in it, like San Gennaro and Saint Philomena. So next is a wonderful new children's book called Eli's Quiet Friend by Sister Allison Regina, who is a daughter of St. Paul, one of the Media nuns.
We love the Daughters of St. Paul. They always have really great books, and this one is no exception. It's a winner from start to finish. It's the story of Eli, a young boy who is on the autism spectrum, and Eli has trouble with sounds, things like the noisy city, the vacuum cleaner at home, barking dogs. These are all really hard for him.
But fortunately, his grandma knows a nice, quiet place where Eli can go and visit with a special friend who will speak to him in just a quiet whisper. And so she takes him to the Adoration Chapel at church and introduces him to Jesus in the Eucharist.
And this is the perfect spot for Eli because it's beautiful and it's quiet and Jesus is there, so he can find that peace he needs in a really crazy, noisy, hectic world.
So the illustrations in this book perfectly accentuate the story, and it's a great reminder of where we can go to hear God's voice and find peace in our lives.
And this is the first Catholic picture book that we've seen that addresses autism, so we think it just fills a need in a very beautiful way. This particular copy is headed to our library at church because I know that we have a lot of families who will really enjoy this one.
And of course, we would love to see more picture books from Sister Allison and the Daughters of St. Paul.
I'm starting with my favorite book from January, which was definitely Hiking the Camino, 500 Miles with Jesus by Father Dave Pivonka, who is from the University of Steubenville. So when the 10th anniversary of his priesthood was coming up, he decided that he was going to walk the Camino as a way of saying thank you to God for letting him be a priest. And his theme for the walk was going to be all for the King. So Father Dave is very funny. He tells it like it is. He talks about how he prepared his expectations for the Camino as opposed to what the Camino was really like. He shares several lessons that he learned along the way. Some of them are very touching, some very inspiring, but it just gave you a really good feel for what it's like to walk the Camino, and it makes us want to walk the Camino even more. That's been on our bucket list for a while, and Father Dave is kind of pushing us along that path. So it was a highly enjoyable read. I definitely recommend this one.
So my book today is Once a Queen by Sarah Arthur. So I was gifted this book. I knew nothing about it. I had never heard of it. And so I had a lot of fun just going in completely blind to this story. So it follows Ava Joyce. She is an American teenager, but she is going over to England with her mother to spend the summer with her grandmother at her big fancy estate, Carrick Hall. And it sounds like the dream, going to England for the summer, but her mother and grandmother have a very strained relationship. Ava has been estranged from her grandmother for her whole life, so tensions are running high. Now, when she gets there, things are going pretty well, but she soon discovers that there's a lot of interesting things going on at Carrick Hall. There are magical things going on in the garden at night, and there are a lot of secrets there. The staff has a lot of secrets, but then also her mother and grandmother are keeping plenty of their own. But what is really interesting is that a lot of these secrets have to do with her favorite book of fairy tales, The Tales of Chernobyl. So this book was very fun. It was very whimsical and magical. One of my favorite things was that at the beginning of each chapter, the author wrote in a story or an excerpt from The Tales of Chernobyl. So she wrote Ava's whole story in this book, but then it's almost as if she wrote a whole nother book and was writing the Tales of Chernobyl and putting them inside for us to read and enjoy. So Ava is 14 in this book, so it's made for a little bit of a younger audience, but I really enjoyed it as an adult, and it is part of an up-and-coming series, and I really think that I would read and continue on with this series if given the chance. So I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend it.
My second book is Organizing for the Rest of Us by Dana K. White, 100 Realistic Strategies to Keep Any House Under Control. So most of you know that one of our goals for 2025 is to declutter 2,025 items from our house. So when I saw this one at the library, I thought, well, maybe this will be really helpful. And it was. It is really a fun book. It's divided into 100 short chapters. The author is very funny. She's very practical. She has a lot of great advice. 2 things in particular I'm taking away from this book. And the first thing is her advice to think of your house as a container. You can only keep what will fit in a container. So for example, you're organizing your sock drawer and you're wondering, like, how many pairs of socks should I keep? Well, she asked the question, how many socks will fit in your drawer? That's how many you can keep. If they don't fit, you have to get rid of some. It's as simple as that. The other piece of advice that I loved is that she says, you can keep anything, you just can't keep everything. So for me, that's been very freeing. I don't have to say, does this spark joy? Is this something that I need and use? The bottom line is I can keep whatever I want, I just can't keep it all. So now sometimes if I have an item that I want to keep for no good reason, I think, okay, I can keep this, I can keep anything, but what else is going to go in its place? So if you're looking to declutter and organize and have fun along the way, this is a great book and I highly recommend it. Next up for me is A Mother's Rule of Life by Holly Perlow, How to Bring Order to Your Home and Peace to Your Soul. And this one has been on my TBR list for, 20 years. When I was first having my kids, this was highly recommended to me. The author is teaching you how to arrange your day to get things done, similar to a religious order having a rule of life that they follow. So she wrote this when she was a stay-at-home mom with 4 little kids, and her house was in chaos, her life was in chaos, and she wasn't getting much done. And so she wanted to restructure her time and her day, and she hit upon the idea of having this mother's rule of life. So I'm just going to be completely honest here and say, when I first started reading this book, I did not like it at all because I felt like the author sounded really smug. I've got it all figured out. Do what I do and your life will be great. But then as I kept on reading it, she got more into her backstory. And then I realized, oh, okay, she's just like the rest of us. She's had her ups and downs and her problems, just like anyone. And so then I liked it a little bit more. So this one has some really good ideas in it, some really good takeaways on how to put more order and structure into your daily life at home. And that's all good. Having said that, though, I will say there were a few places in this book that really made me pause. For instance, in her section on finances, she preaches a little bit of that health and wealth prosperity gospel. The idea that if you tithe consistently, no matter what your finances are, then God will reward you financially. And the parochial vicar is just saying, no, that is the health and wealth prosperity gospel, just no. And I agree with him. So I didn't really like that about the book. The other thing that gave me pause about the book is that her children were young when this book was published and they were homeschooling. But as far as I could see, they had no outside activities. So no youth group, no soccer, nothing. And that's very, very unusual for homeschoolers. Homeschoolers like their outside activities. So yeah, if you are homeschooling and you're not going anywhere all day, then yeah, you can follow a strict schedule a lot more easily. And then also this was written largely before the rise of social media. So she doesn't touch on that very much. So even though I felt like, it's definitely dated in some aspects and there are some things in here I don't agree with, I still thought it was worth reading, and I'm definitely glad that after all these years I can check it off my list. I love to read books about books, so my last book today definitely feeds into that addiction, and it is Rare Books Uncovered: True Stories of Fantastic Finds in Unlikely Places by Rebecca Berry. This is a fun collection of stories about people who have found different rare books and manuscripts and documents in unlikely places. For instance, there's a story in here about a man who found a 15th or 16th century Vatican book in an Oklahoma City warehouse. I mean, what are the chances of that? And then there's another fun story about a man who bought a copy, first edition, of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Those are pretty rare. He saw it laying out on a park bench and bought it from a guy for $3. The author also reminds us of that very good book advice: anything could be anywhere. So if you're collecting books, if you're looking for books, don't ever give up, because anything could be anywhere. Look high and look low. And it's just funny because right after I read this book, I saw a story in the news about a very rare handwritten copy of the Constitution that was found in the pages of a legal book in a shop in New York City. So anything really can be anywhere. I enjoyed a lot of stories in this book, but I am going to be honest and say it's probably not my favorite book ever about books, because I felt like some of the stories in here just weren't that interesting or unusual. And towards the end, there is even a chapter that I'm not even sure why the author included it. It was a little bit PG-13. It was pretty silly. I just thought it was in poor taste, and I just wish this book could have been complete without that chapter in it. If you like books about books, though, this is a fun one. You could just skim through it and pick out your favorite stories. I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars.
All right, so we had a pretty good reading month in January.
We are off to a good start for the year.
So as always, let us know what you read in January and what you plan to read in February.
So happy reading. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.